we'll move on to everything else. It's probably not the way you're supposed to do your show.
Okay, and we are live. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Champ's Lunch, a Schmoedown podcast from the hosts of Some Like It Scott. I'm Scott Harvey, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Scott Shelton. Scott, we are just fresh off of the Schmoedown Throwdown, the second live event of the month of September, and we're going to be talking about what we just witnessed, including the Mike versus Janine match, but also the NUKE.
But also the main event, the NUKE.
Yes, the main. Honestly, I saw someone in the chat saying that the NUKE. Well, I was really expecting it to be bigger, and for obvious reasons, I think that's a little bit absurd.
I'm curious what this guy wanted to see. Then I want to hear his suggestions.
Yeah, I think he wanted to see like the studio get burned down or something, fiery heap, and they have to start over, doing it on a couch again, like they did in season 1. But okay, we are going to. Before we get to the NUKE, however, we're going to go through the matches that we had in the month of September. And it was pretty much dominated by the Ultimate Schmoedown Singles Tournament, which has been good for one of our brackets, not so good for another one of our brackets. We will reveal that as we go on. But, Scott, let's start with that first live event we had that was supposed to be the Arizona event. As Josh Makuga pointed out during the Wildberries match, much to the chagrin of all of the people who were supposed to go to the Arizona event. I don't think they were too happy with him for that remark. I don't think he'll be happily welcomed to Arizona at a future live event. But
he probably would be.
Yeah. Wildberries. It was our one non-tournament match of the month. So let's just start by talking about that. It was the undercard for that event. Wildberries versus Late to the Party. Scott, this is one of those matches that you knew pretty much you thought you knew what you were going to get with this match, and that was a very entertaining match, probably some great entrances, some great personalities during the match, and maybe somewhat average trivia play. And I think most people were surprised about what we actually did get, which was a really well-fought and high-scoring match that came down to the end. Elliot Dewberry, kind of hearkening back to the days of his old team ETC when he was with Ricky Hayberg, and that was one of those teams that kind of somehow was able to pull out wins despite having one player who could barely answer a single question correctly, that being Ricky. And I think Elliot kind of channeled his... back in the day when he had to sort of put the team on his back for this match. Not Makuga played particularly poorly, but Elliot going a perfect 9 for 9 in round 1, causing some people to call this now call a perfect round 1 the Dewberry, which I find hilarious just because of all the people who have had perfect rounds, perfect 9 for 9s. The last person who you would expect to name the achievement after is Elliot Dewberry, which probably is what makes it funny. But yeah, this match came down to the 5-point questions. Wildberries hitting theirs. Late to the Party, I believe, were trailing by 5 and could have sent the match to sudden death. If I remember the score correctly, I think it was 31-26. But they were unable to come up with the correct answer. I will say shout out to the Late to the Party for their great costumes during the match, dressing up as Ron Burgundy and Veronica Corningstone from Anchorman. That was, you can always count on them for a great entrance, and they definitely delivered. But the Wildberries getting a big win. Scott, obviously we haven't seen their first round tournament match yet against the family, but I know that it has filmed already, and based on the comments that Makuga was making in the interview, like, oh, I'm so glad we finally got a win. I think we kind of know how this match is going to go, and that's not a huge surprise, I guess, but a great showing from the Wildberries here to get themselves to a record of 3-4.
Yeah, I mean, who knows whether you're reading too much into that comment. I don't know. But it is to say that this match was maybe not exactly how it was billed. It was better than it was billed, exactly to your point, I think, because it was extremely entertaining. You got some good, you got a mild Barry intro for sure. You didn't get very much from Josh and Elliot, but you got a great entrance, like you put to Late to the Party with their Anchorman entrance. And yeah, and then you had some great trivia. I always wonder if some of these, if the questions and the difficulty of the questions of the match are tailored for the match specifically, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But I think that if that was the case, if that did happen for this match, it was done appropriately so, because it made it all the more entertaining. You had a high scoring match. And frankly, as much as everyone loves to see a dumpster fire like Dagnino against Burnett, it's also nice to see people answering trivia questions correctly. And that's not to slight either Late to the Party or the Wildberries, because they both clearly put on a great show and answered a lot of questions, both easy and difficult. But I think that sometimes I've wondered that in the past. I wondered it during this match, but it didn't really matter all that much because it was a really fun time. And if the Wildberries don't get the W against the Family, I agree. We won't be particularly surprised. We haven't made our predictions yet, but I think maybe we're showing our hands for one of our picks there. And overall, I think it was just a great start to the live event. And, you had a much more significant match, so to speak, to follow it up between Chance Ellison and William Bibiani. But to stick with this match for a second, I think it was we haven't really seen Elliot Dewberry, to your point, kind of put in that kind of performance in a while. Frankly, we haven't seen Josh McCouga put in that kind of performance in a while either. So Josh has had a rough year in the Schmoedown. I mean, getting suspended for a month or 2 months, whatever it ended up being after his stipulation match against Paul Oyama. I can't really remember what it was, but yeah, to come back now and get a win after a couple tries is probably much needed, regardless of whether or not he was referring to their woes against the Family, if that is factored into what he was talking about. But, it's good to see them win again. They know who they are in the Schmoedown. They know their brand, and it isn't necessarily always about winning, but it's putting on a good show, and we had a good time.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we don't know how much to read into McCouga's comments, but he does tend to be pretty I know you don't watch Collector Live as much as I do, but he does tend to be pretty blasé about the spoilers and potentially spoiling things. The reason that I even knew in the first place that this match had filmed, the Family match, was because he brought it up on Collider Live, like, I was talking to Guy backstage before our match the other day. This was before the bracket had even came out, and Christian was like, easy. So I would not be surprised if his comments reflected the match to come. But again, that's not a surprise. And, you would expect to see the Family win there. But we'll get to that in due time. Great match. Wildberries moving to a record of 3-4 for the time being. Late to the Party, I guess a little bit of bad luck. But no matter how many matches they lose, and they're on a bit of a losing streak at the moment, they'll always have that win against Critically Acclaimed. Still one of the biggest upsets ever in a team's match, so they can hang their hat upon that, and just upon the fact that they're really entertaining. But Scott, let's move now into the singles matches and the singles tournament, which, like I said up top, dominated the month of September 2019. And we'll start there with that main event for what was supposed to be the Arizona Live event. Ended up just being an in-studio event, and that was Chance Ellison against William the Beast Bibiani. Scott, when we predicted this match on our bracket special, we really had a tough time with this one because this might have been the toughest round one matchup to predict because Chance, even though he's the newcomer to the league, Bibiani has been a champion in this league and is known as one of the most fearsome players. Chance is one of those guys who his singles record does not reflect perhaps the knowledge that he has. He was one question away from potentially being at that New York Live event playing for the championship against Jeff Snyder. He
was more than one question away, but yeah.
Yes. Well, he was one question away in that Oyama match. Then he would have had to win
against Shannon Miller.
Right. And then he would have had to beat Dan too. But the point is, he was close to being a champion. And this match reflected, everything that we thought it was going into it. It was an absolutely brutally tough match going down to the very last question. Chance had the upper hand for most of the match, kind of like we saw against Paul. Bibiani, of course, he's never really going to get blown out in a match just because he has such a great base knowledge. I believe, did they both have perfect rounds in round one? I want to say that it was 8-8.
I'm not actually sure. Maybe. I'd have to double check that. It's possible. Yeah. I mean, they both had good round ones, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, of course. But once again, as we saw with Chance in that Paul match, it came down to that last question for him. and he wasn't able to hit it. Those 5-pointers are hard for sure. But this was a national treasure question that I really felt like he should have known. Maybe it's just I was going to say people from maybe it's just people from our generation, but Chance is also from our generation. In fact, he's younger than we are. So yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, maybe he was too young to see that movie as many times as we have, but yeah, I wasn't like 100% confident that I knew the answer to the question, but my gut told me the answer immediately. I was like, well, I mean, this is all I got. I definitely can't think of anyone else who this would have been besides Harvey Keitel. But yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know that cloak and dagger question that he had in the Paul match, but a lot of people were saying too that should have been one that he was able to pull. So
I'm sure
maybe
Paul also told him that it was one that he should have been able to pull, I believe, after the match.
Yeah, as Paul is wont to do.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to say that he needs to study more, right? Because he does play so strong, but here's 2 matches and two huge matches, right, in his career, right, where he really could have taken the next step in the singles division. Obviously, we've seen what he can do in teams. He's on the team champions at the moment, but he was unable to take out a vet like William Bibbiani, and Bibbiani moves on, much to the pleasure of my bracket and not so much to yours, Scott.
Yeah, it happens. We're going to be saying it happens a lot to my bracket today, I believe. But no, to your point about Chance, I mean, I think Chance is 2-3 now, and his 3 losses have been against either former all former singles champions. I mean, the current singles champion, Paul Oyama, and then Ethan Irwin last year, and then earlier this year, of course, and then now Bibbiani. Sorry, and then Bibbiani. Yeah, so those are his 3 losses in the singles division. They're all singles champions or former singles champions, and so his strength of schedule is high, I believe, is the way that they describe that. And so I was actually just looking up the rankings, and to see him down in 17th ranked in the singles division is a little bit crazy to think that he's only lost to champions in the singles division. But so it goes. Sometimes you get the bad luck, but if he had a debut season, for example, like Paul did in terms of who he was playing at first, you might have seen him. I'm not saying he would be champion right now, because what Paul has done is absolutely spectacular, and he did beat Chan. But I think that you wouldn't have saw him start 0-1 for sure, because he wouldn't have debuted against a current singles, then to become the singles champion in Ethan Irwin in the Ultimate Schmoedown singles tournament last year, and then you would have saw him get some confidence and some wins under his belt, and maybe his record would be roughly the same. But I mean, he's played 5 matches and 3 of them have been against champions, so that's a tough one. But that doesn't get you got to beat champions as well to get to that next level. To your point, exactly. And so he's that close. I mean, he's a 5-point question. Seems like every time a 5-point question away from beating these guys, and he hasn't been able to do it yet, but I think he's close. And unlike some other people who I think have been close before and haven't been able to get across the finish line, I still have complete faith that Chance will get across the finish line. I mean, yes, I can't really speak to the difficulty or ease of the 5-point cloak and dagger question, but I did think the national treasure question was closer to a 5-point question at least than a lot of ones that we complain about normally. It just so happens that I saw that movie literally probably 7 or 8 times when I was younger and just familiar with it. So a little bit of trying to recognize my own bias there in terms of what I know and what I don't know. But overall, he's going to bounce back from this. If he gets, maybe Chance will never get a run of matches in the singles division where he's not playing top tier quality very quickly. And so maybe it'll be tough to get his feet under him and get several wins in a row if he can't overcome that next hurdle. But I think he has the quality, and he's proven that both in the singles division in terms of the quality of matches he's putting in, even when he loses, but especially in the teams division with corruption.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough go for him, but he's proven that I think he's up to it in some of his teams matches. We know that he is capable of hitting these 5-point questions.
Yeah, definitely.
And being in the upper echelon of players, but he's still got to get there, and he'll have to wait until next season to do that in the singles division. But so that was one of our matches we had.
And just to that point, exactly, like there's a couple people out there in like the singles division. I think Chance is like first and foremost among them, who just have like oddly lopsided records or records that don't necessarily reflect the talent they have. I think Mark Andreyko is another person who's 6-6. I mean, JTE is 9-10. So they're and McWeeny, of course, I think is one of the other big ones there, who's like 4-5, who, they have tough records because they play really tough opponents a lot of times. And then, I don't think this is really the case anymore at this point in the season, but then earlier in the season, there were people who had really strong records that you're like, Drew McWeeny and Chance Ellison, they're probably better players than them. It just happens, who you play, you gotta get the wins to get up in the rankings. So.
And some people are just better teams players than they are singles.
Yeah.
And, maybe this is two examples. I think McQueenie, is obviously one of the best teams players. We've seen that he was a champion with Above the Line, and now is performing very well with the family. Maybe something about singles
Whitney Seibold
has just eluded them. Yeah, Whitney Seibold, another great example. But, okay, Scott, so that's the Bibbs versus Ellison match. Why don't we move down the right side of the bracket since we're over there and talk about who Bibbs's next opponent is going to be. And his next opponent is going to be Ethan Big Time Irwin. Scott, we saw Ethan take on. Actually, I believe we talk about this match last time? We did, because that was he faced off against Haley Fouch. That was last month's live event, so we don't even need to talk about that. Wonderful.
Do you want to go ahead and predict that match? Or I know technically your bracket's still good on that side. Mine's not, but I would. We can talk about Ethan.
Okay, well there you go. I was going to say we can talk about it at the end, but because that is going to be a brutal match. I mean, like just as much as the Bibbs and Chance match was a hard one to call. I mean, this is going to be tough. Obviously, they have faced off against each other in a three-way match, right? But that the dynamic there can be very different than in a head-to-head match. So I'm really looking forward to this one. It's going to be a banger. All right, moving down that right side of the bracket then, Scott, let's get to our match that we saw today on the Schmoedown Throwdown, and that was Mike Kalinowski against Janine the Machine. Rematch of a match that we had a couple of months ago. Kalinowski coming out on top in that one. And he got the upper hand early in this match. Perfect round. He got a dewberry in round one. Perfect 9 for 9. Janine, certainly no slouch herself, coming out with 7 points. I just have to say,
to be fair, I think we also got 7 or 8 points each. So,
yeah, we did. And from a psychological standpoint, it's got to suck when you only miss one question and yet end up with a 2-point disadvantage going into round two. Because Janine probably feels like, man, that was a great round one for me, and yet she's down 9-7 going into the wheel round. So that's tough. And what's also tough is playing against Mike Kalinowski when he spins James Bond, because which I think at this point we should just say playing against Mike Kalinowski, because he spins James Bond in every single match. And there was some suspense this time because he didn't spin it first time around, but then of course it hung right on the edge there of being, I believe it was opponent's choice before rolling over to James Bond, really desperately eluding us. But Mike did have to go to multiple choice on a couple of questions, or on one question.
Just one.
And on 2 questions, yeah.
No, just
one.
Oh,
yeah, it was one. You're right, yeah. But Janine was not able to get the steal. But regardless, that missed question allowed Janine to still be within range of tying Mike, were she to have a perfect second round. She was down by 8 points, 15-7. And that's exactly what Janine did, spinning Cameron Diaz, which, while not her strength of rom-coms, is probably like tangentially related to rom-coms. And there were a couple of rom-coms questions in there. So still a very good category for Janine to spin. Tied it up at 15, Scott. So a little bit of an improvement, I think, from the last match. I think Mike led most of the way in the last match. But, moving it around 3. He got a
TKO in the last match. So,
yeah. As we've seen with Janine in the past, round 3 eludes her. And, that didn't change in this match today. They both got their 2-point questions pretty quickly and easily. But then the 3-point.
Because it's Cameron Diaz and Bond again.
Yeah, exactly. But then the 3-pointer, Janine was not able to hit. Mike did get his, and making the point that people think he only watches Inner Geekdom movies. Well, the question happened to be about Annihilation, which is a movie that apparently he had just watched.
Yes, but also about an MCU actress. So, yeah, no, but I'm just giving him shit. Yeah.
That's true. There was an Inner Geekdom element to the question, I suppose. So Mike hit the 3-pointer. Janine forced to answer her 5-pointer. Tough question, admittedly, about Hotel Transylvania 3.
Yeah. Mel
but
Brooks.
Wasn't able to get it. Yeah, Mel Brooks was the answer. Mike getting the win, 20-17. And so, yeah, it was a great match. You know, Janine, again, has to feel disappointed. Talking about players, singles players with poor records, whose records don't reflect their ability. Janine, absolutely an example of that. She's 3-5 now, I believe. And yet, I think she could give about most anyone in the league, singles players wise, a really good match. And we've seen that now with her and Kalinowski twice. And obviously, he's one of the best in the league at the moment. So tough defeat for her. But she will be back next season, I'm sure, in the singles division. Probably, you know, she'll probably have some good time to study now, because it'll be a couple of months before, you know, a few months actually before we get to the start of season 7. She will be in the teams tournament.
I was going to say, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But singles wise, we will have to wait until next season to see her.
Yeah, you know, I will say one thing about that. The way people were talking about it ended her season. I know they didn't specify, it ended her single season, but it made me feel like the time machine has like lost already in whatever the tapings that they're doing. And
who's their first round opponent?
I don't know the bracket off the top of my head. I'll look it up.
I think it might be like the Looney Bin. I think it might be Video Drew, but I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, it could be. But I also think that they only have like one more taping day left before. They only have a couple taping days left, so they might even be like pretty deep in the teams tournament already.
Yeah, that's possible.
Sure. Yeah, I'm really just not sure.
But I'll admit, I did think about that same thing about, does this mean that Time Machine is out of the team tournament now? Yeah, we will see. I hope I try not to read too much into these things, but it's hard not to, because we do know, of course, that they are pretty far ahead taping in terms of the matches that when they release the matches. To that point, the Rocky exhibition match, which came out yesterday, I'm not spoiling the ending of it or anything, but Tom Dagnino told us in Houston, which was months ago, he was like, wait till you guys see this match. It's going to be great. And so he was right, too. It was a great match. If you haven't watched it yet, if you're a $10 up patron, go check it out. But that just illustrates how, how far ahead sometimes they have these matches recorded. So.
Yeah. So the Time Machine plays the Scream Queens in the first round, and then if they were to win that match, they would play the winners of the Looney Bin and the Self-Righteous Brothers.
Okay. Yeah. Tough teams there.
Yeah. I mean, but we'd expect. I mean, again, we'll have a prediction show, but we would expect them to beat the Scream Queens.
Yes, we would. We would expect them to get past the Scream Queens for sure.
So maybe we're reading too much into it, is what I'm saying.
Maybe we are. And Scott KO is going to be facing off against John, the Outlaw Roca. This is going to be quite the grudge match. We already had some good trash talk going on in the post-match interview for Mike and for Roca, who had a pretty vintage Roca interview after this match against Silvestrini, talking about hanging and banging or whatever. Hanging and banging. I can't remember the other weird things that he said, but it was something to behold. You know, Roca may be getting tired in terms of the trivia aspect. He may be a little bit behind some of the pack in that, but on the mic, he still got it, I think.
Unintentionally or intentionally, he still has it on the mic.
Yeah. But yeah, so he faced off against Rachel Silvestrini. Scott, I think this was a good match for Roca to get some of his confidence back because Silvestrini is a good player. Absolutely. Another player who her record doesn't quite reflect how good she is, I think. Especially in teams with Devon. I think they're a sneakily good team with Inky and the Brain, and they will be in the team's tournament as well. So
Inky and the Brain is playing. Oh, wait, are they not in? Oh, they're playing Who's the Boss? Are they playing Who's the Boss? They're playing Who's the Boss. Also, I found the other Roca quote. It was always got some meat here. We've been hanging and banging for 2 decades. So and then Jen at the end of the interview was like, just us hanging and banging with some meat. So
that was the thing that happened. Okay. So Roca played Silvestrini. A close match, Scott. It did come down to those 5-point questions. Yeah. Roca able to hit his, and Silvestrini not able to quite pull hers. Yeah, like I said, I think this will be a good confidence boost for Roca because he's been struggling some. The Horsemen have been struggling overall, obviously. And especially because one of the horsemen is already out of the tournament. We'll talk about that shortly. But I think they really needed this win, and they needed the Bateman win as well. And they got both of them. So horsemen still alive in the singles tournament for now. We'll see maybe how that affects their team's play in their title match in Orlando, Founding Fathers versus Corruption. Maybe they will have some of their mojo back. Again, depending on what the outcome of the singles tournament is, because we might even be, all the matches may have even been recorded, except for the finals, of course, at this point. So maybe one of them has made it all the way to the finals. Yeah. But regardless, Rocco moves on. He will face Kalinowski. Scott, I think we both had this section of the bracket correct, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that is correct. we took the chalk on this in this section of the bracket.
Good job for you. Are you looking forward to this Rocco Kalinowski match?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as much as you're looking forward to Bibiani and Irwin for the sheer quality and like two titans of the league somehow facing off in the quarterfinals, I think you look forward to the Rocco and Kalinowski match, not because it won't also be a high quality trivia match, but because these personalities are just going to be something else to see go against each other. I can't wait to see whatever like trash talk videos happen in the Schmoedown Facebook page over the next week, because this match is one that's coming up really soon. I imagine they are taping this match probably as we speak, as we record this, because they only have a week to get this one out the door. And then, so seeing the trash talk on Facebook is something I'm looking forward to. And then the promo that's going to get cut for this one is probably just going to be absolutely hilarious. And then the jabs that are going to happen between the two of them on the table, on the mic, during the match is going to be high quality. And then also, I guess they're going to answer some trivia questions. So we'll see what happens. Somewhere in there.
Yeah, I'm sure Eric from Nerd Chronic is licking his lips at the prospect of cutting a promo for this match. And it will be good. It will be a good one whenever we get it. So, all right, Scott. Let's move on to the left side of the bracket now. And we'll start at the top, Scott. This is my one rotten egg in my first round bracket, as I think it was for most people. I think a lot of people's brackets got busted. This match busted more people's brackets than any of them, and that was
match number one.
Yes, Mark Riley against Stacey Howard. Scott, we joked about it on our prediction special. We were like, the time we give Stacey no credit and don't pick her is going to be the time she turns around and pulls off an upset. And what do you know? She went out there and did it.
The only time I didn't pick her to win this year, I think.
Yeah. Riley kind of reminded me of the McQueenie match a little bit. It was a match that he trailed in for a lot of the match. He hung around enough, pulled his 5-point question, despite being behind. Stacey had a really good round two after getting Julia Roberts movies, which is, again, kind of tangential to her strength of rom-coms, kind of like Janine with the Cameron Diaz movies. And so she had that lead. Riley had to do some battling back in round three, and he was able to do that, just as he was in that McQueenie match. He hits his 5-point question, bouncing it over to Stacey for her 5-pointer. And I think, Scott, I know we were watching this match together, and I think at that point we kind of felt, okay, it was close, but he's pulled it out now. He got that 5-pointer right. He's going to squeak by and hopefully learn something from this in his next match. But we weren't giving Stacey enough credit for once. And she pulled the answer to a pretty tough question about Step Brothers for her 5-point question.
Yeah, it was like the name of the company they started or something.
Yeah. And so Corruption continues their torrid run this season. I think that joining up with this faction may have been a good choice for Stacey. She has a good teams partner now, and Tim Franco as well. We'll look forward to seeing them in the teams tournament.
Against the Loose Cannons in the first round. Oh, boy.
Yeah. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of these teams tournament matchups. We said this already, but the teams tournament, or the teams division is just so stacked this year that this tournament is going to be epic. I don't look forward to our prediction special when we're going to have to pick some of these tough matches. But Stacey continues her trend of pulling off some shocking upsets in the first round of the Ultimate Schmoedown. Obviously, she didn't do it with Merle last year. That would have been quite something. But she was, obviously, I think this jumps over her Mark Ellis win as her most impressive win in the Schmoedown. Riley, a little bit of the Horseman curse, I guess you could say, but also I don't think that this match was totally inconsistent with how we've seen him play in singles this year. Like I said, I think he was lucky to win that McQueenie match. And the Snyder match, which he lost, was actually maybe his best singles match that he's had this year. He played really well in that match and got kind of unlucky with Snyder being able to pull that 5-point question out of nowhere. But
that was like the Scottish actor question, right?
Yeah, or Welsh actor recently.
Welsh actor. Yeah.
But maybe kind of like Roca, it's time for Riley to, I wouldn't say to overall retire, but maybe just focus on teams. Because I think he's got a really good teams partner in Ben Bateman. I think the two of them work really well together. They have a really good chance, I think, to go to the Ultimate Schmoedown or win the Ultimate Schmoedown again, teams tournament, as they did last year. And so I think maybe that's where Riley needs to turn his focus at this point. Obviously, he's not going to play a singles match for the rest of the year, but maybe going forward as well, because I'm not sure that he's doing the type of studying or consistent preparation that we see is now necessary to win, or at least to be one of the top players in the singles division. You have to be doing it's the game has definitely changed from when Riley was at the top of the heap and was a 2-time champion.
Yeah, and to your point about who's the boss, I think that they have Inky in the brain in round one, which tough team, but you'd expect them to get by. And then they have a tough quarterfinal matchup either with Crimson Fury or the Loose Cannons. And then I would say that they are on the better half of the draw, because if you look at the other half, there's the Odd Couple, Shazam, Time Machine, and then one of the Looney Bin and Self-Righteous Brothers, which will be like the 4 in the quarterfinals probably. And I think that's a bit of a tougher other side of the draw. So they're on the right side of the draw, to your point, to make a deep run there. And I agree. I think Mark Riley really at this point in his career benefits a lot from having that team dynamic. I mean, obviously he was one of the greats of the singles division for several years, winning the belt twice. But now I think at this stage, maybe he's not preparing the same way. And I think he is someone who really benefits from having that team member on the table with him, especially when that team member is Ben Bateman, who, it seems like every single time you talk about him, you have to add an asterisk and a footnote around, best player who doesn't have a belt next to his name. And so I think that dynamic, whether they're in the context of the Horseman faction or not, is clearly something that he is really benefiting from. And it seems like he either gets, just an extra shot of adrenaline or a little bit of extra juice going into his play when that is the case, when they are on the table together. Because as well as he's played in some of his matches, and I don't think he's played poorly in any of the matches that he's been in this year, he has been able to be outshined on a couple occasions, even when he played well, and he's squeaked by on others. So, maybe it is time to hang up the singles division and make an appearance every once in a while and focus on the teams, because, who's the boss? They did, of course, have that number one contenders match in Chicago near the beginning of the season, but then they kind of went dark for a while, and I don't think they've played a match since then.
No.
Yeah, so I wonder if maybe next season, we'll talk about the NUKE later and what that might mean, but, if they are able to make a deep run in the teams tournament and secure a high enough ranking, you might still see them together next year, even after the NUKE.
Yeah, we will see. That you're absolutely right. That is something that the NUKE will have big implications on. But overall, Scott, this match, a huge bracket buster. I'd be interested to know how many perfect brackets are still out there. I will say that if Brendan is able to move on and beat Stacy, then that would kind of right the ship on my bracket for the time being, because I did have Brendan knocking out Riley, I believe. So that would help me there. But a tough loss for Riley and a tough loss for almost everyone who filled out a bracket for this competition. But moving on, yeah, I already spoiled.
So before we move on, can you just unplug and plug back your mic back in? I'm just getting some weird crackling on your mic.
Okay. How are we doing?
You're a little bit faint on volume. All of a sudden.
Okay. How about now?
Still low on volume. Maybe do what you normally do with the mic now just to see if it makes a difference. Oh, can't hear you at all now. My bad. Shouldn't have tried to fix anything.
How about now?
There we go. We're back. We're good now.
Okay.
Sweet.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll move on now to the next match, Scott. I already kind of spoiled it there. Brendan Meyer was able to win his match against Whitney Seibold. I believe, did we talk about this match in the last month? I think this was right at the end of last month.
I can't remember if we talked about it. I don't think we did.
Okay. Well, if we did
Maybe
or not, we definitely did, because we talked about Whitney Seibold and the way that he really threw caution to the wind in that second round. And
yeah, he pulled a Snyder almost.
Yeah, and to transition to the next match, then I think this is something we also sort of saw happening in the Lon Harris versus Paul Preston match. Scott, which is another match where we diverged in our opinions on the match about who was going to win. I had Paul, you had Lon. And Lon Harris, kind of a little bit of a similar tactic in round two, even though he wasn't sure on some of these questions, started guessing rather than going to multiple choice, and allowed Paul to get a couple of big 2-point steals and get back in the game. Whereas I think Lon maybe was ahead after round one even. And
yeah, it was a weird tactic. I didn't fully understand it myself. And, it makes you wonder between Lon's recent performances in the singles division, which have been good, but maybe not up to his previous standard, as well as, a little bit of the decline of, well, I guess what was the Harris brothers and then return to being the evil geniuses. I think his stock's a little bit down right now.
Yeah, definitely. And that was kind of what I was counting on when I picked Paul Preston in this match, because I think Paul is someone whose stock is rising. Scott, I said it to you after this match, and I'm calling it right now. I'm going on the record. Paul Preston will be a singles champion in season 7 of the movie Trivia Schmoedown. I'm calling it right now.
Even after the NUKE announcement, you don't think that anything's affected by that at all?
I mean, I think everything's affected by that, but I don't know that that's going to affect his knowledge, because he's not really in a faction. He doesn't have a manager right now,
but he will. He will be though.
Yeah, he will. Yeah. That is true. But I don't know. I feel like that's only going to help him, probably. But
yeah, I mean, okay. To be honest, I think we're probably doing a disservice not talking about this. But we talk about it as if it's an automatically he's going to be around next year. We'll see what happens. Of course, with his wife struggling with her health right now, and obviously we wish her the best. And if you are able to, there is a donation, Facebook donation page up right now, both on the movie Trivia Schmoedown site, and then a bunch of people in the Schmoedown, a bunch of personalities are tweeting it out. So, she's going through a lot right now. It seems like she's in pretty good spirits. I was going through a lot of the posts on there, and I think things are going as well as they can be. But obviously, we're thinking about her and wish her the best for sure, both her and Paul.
Yeah, last I saw, they were really close to meeting the goal. So go over there and throw a few bucks in if you can to support Paul. Because honestly, Scott, to talk at a macro level, he's becoming one of my favorite people in the Schmoedown. I think he's one of the best new characters that we've had this season for sure. I think
he's the best new character we have this season in terms of personality.
Yeah, I think there's certainly a case to be made for that. I think he's a really funny character, and quickly becoming one of my favorites. So I'm glad that he'll be sticking around at least for another match. Getting the win over Lon Harris, getting his revenge. Of course, his one loss that he has had so far was to Lon, but not so much here. He gets the win. And yeah, Lon, like you said, a little bit, his stock is definitely trending down, and we will see if that will continue to happen in the team's tournament, because of course now JTE is not going to be his partner on the Evil Geniuses. Seems like due to some personal reasons, JTE is stepping away for a bit from the Schmoedown. And replacing him is going to be Simon Thompson, Scott, which is not someone who has played in the Schmoedown before, but someone who I believe you're a little bit familiar with from maybe some appearances on Movie Talk.
Yeah, he's a semi-regular on Movie Talk. He's usually on either, once every other week or so. And I really enjoy having him on Movie Talk. it's impossible to be able to tell someone's breadth of movie trivia Schmoedown knowledge from, I mean, any of these Collider shows that we watch and talk about a lot. But I kind of did a double take because I was like, Simon, I recognize that voice in the scene there. He and Lon came together. So, I mean, we'll see what their chemistry is like. I'm honestly just a little bit surprised that it's not just Jonathan stepping back in. I mean, I know they've struggled in their last couple matches. I think their last 2 matches they played together. I mean, one of them, of course, was that Ultimate Schmoedown Teams Tournament final that they got absolutely rocked in by Who's the Boss. And then they had a tough showing, I think, their initial outing this year as well. But I'm a little bit surprised they didn't just step back in, because I think people like that team, right? People like their dynamic, and they are unique in their personalities. And Simon's a little bit of a wild card. I think that what I think this means that either Jonathan really doesn't want to come back in and play any more matches, because fairly or unfairly, I think people might have pointed toward him when when the Harris brothers declined a little bit in terms of their performances, or Simon's really good. I mean, it also could be a combination of those two things, but we'll see. We'll see what it is, because I think Lon needs something to boost his confidence, because we thought maybe that win against Paul Preston would boost his confidence, but even then, and I think we talked about this at the time, it was one of those things where we kind of felt like Lon had been a little bit lucky to win that match against Paul, and that Paul had been a little bit unlucky to not come out the victor. And then he got his victory in the second time he tried here in the first round. And I think it's well deserved. I mean, just to switch over to talk about Paul now, I think, I've already said my piece briefly about how I think he's probably the best new character in the Schmoedown, at least one that I'm enjoying the most. I think maybe just in front of Kevin Smets, in my opinion, because of course I think the whole dungeon dynamic and with Kaiser is fantastic and hilarious, and I'm really loving that as well. But Paul's great, and especially the fact that he's doing it mostly on his own. To your point, I mean, earlier you talked about how he doesn't have a manager, he doesn't really have anyone else with him. I mean, yes, he sometimes has his partner in crime from the movie guys, but he's mostly carrying this character, on his own shoulders, and it's different than anything else we have in the Schmoedown. It's not another guy wearing sunglasses, as much as that often likes to get thrown around in the league. But yeah, I think
it's a guy wearing a visor instead.
He's a guy wearing a Wimbledon visor, which is just, I find that so funny.
But not for the tennis tournament, I believe, but for the film starring Kirsten Dunst, I believe.
Is that actually what it is? Is it
I think so, because I believe he made a reference to like that he got it at the premiere, that he was at the premiere of the movie or something, like in his interview in the last match. I think that was.
I think I missed that. I missed that joke then. That's really funny, but it's just I just find it hilarious, and I hope that things in his personal life go well enough where he's able to still commit the time and energy, and he feels comfortable doing that to stay in the Schmoedown, because he's an absolute treat to see, and I think he's one of the best parts of especially the second half of the season, when he's had a lot of matches. I was curious when Christian was just throwing a lot of matches, because I saw the schedule was like, oh, he's playing again. It's very weird to see a new character play so many times so quickly. But because he was introduced in the second half of the season, that was kind of necessary to get him integrated into the league. And honestly, the league's better for it.
I completely agree, Scott. And talking about the Harris brothers, maybe it's a scheduling thing too, because I know that John Harris, like I think he's a comedian, maybe as his day job. Maybe he has like a tour or something that he's going on, because if you remember that last Evil Geniuses match, he was not there.
That's true.
So maybe that has something to do with it, why they haven't reunited that team. But we'll see how Simon does. Personally, I was going to pick against them anyway, because they're facing my boys, the Paddington 2. And I think
maybe one day will get a win. Who knows?
Yeah, they do have one win. They have one.
That's true. They do. That's true.
But win a big one. I think maybe this will be their chance, and that JTE dropping out maybe opens things up a little bit for them. Hopefully,
we'll see. And then last year, the Harris brothers beat Take the Cannoli. So
that's true. We'll see. Another good one to look forward to in the teams tournament. Last singles match to get to, Scott. We've already hinted at the fact that this person moved on. Another win for the Horsemen. Ben Bateman taking down Liz Shannon Miller. Scott, another one that we picked pretty quickly when we made our bracket predictions. We both have been going to the finals, I believe, in the bracket that we picked on air. I think I have Paul Preston going to the finals in my.
You definitely have Paul Preston beating Ben in your bracket you submitted.
In the one that I submitted, yeah.
Because you were like, I don't know about this.
Yeah. No, I feel a little bit better about it now. But Ben, again, a huge confidence boost, kind of like it was for Roca beating Silvestrini to get a win for the Horsemen, and against a solid player in Liz Shannon Miller. Obviously the other big singles win that he had this year was against Guy. I think you would have to say that Liz is a bit of a bit better than Andrew Guy is. So a little bit of a better win there for Ben. And he looked good in the match too. Not many cracks in the armor. I think he had to go to multiple choice maybe a couple times in round 2. But other than that, it was a pretty comfortable win for him.
Yeah, I think he missed one question the entire match. So
yeah.
It was a strong performance, and I was glad to see that for sure. Sorry, you were still finishing. My bad.
No, yeah, I was just going to say he'll move on to face Paul Preston now. I think we had a little bit of a fire in that post-match interview, and I think this is going to be another one that is low-key going to have some really good trash talk.
Yeah, I mean, Ben and Paul are two of the best at trash talking the league, along probably with Mike. I think they both do a really good job. And then, especially if you can get Dagnino to come up with something decent off the cuff on the mic in the match. He's been a little bit more sporadic, and I think this season with the fire takedowns. But maybe it's prime time now. Not to use a competitor's name, but it's the business end of the season, and hopefully Dagnino shows up with his best stuff for some of these interviews and promos and the like. But just to talk quickly about the match, I think Liz Shannon Miller obviously had a great start to her career this season, getting to a number 1 contenders match at Collision against Paul Oyama. We thought maybe she was a little bit overrated in that match, and I think it kind of showed a little bit and how Paul took her down with relative ease. I mean, that was probably the weakest or least competitive match in the Collision. And so it was really good and refreshing to see her come back here and put in, I think, what actually might have been, with maybe the exception of her match against JTE, her best performance so far. And I think kind of confirming that, she's taking this seriously. She's not someone who just came in, is here like, I had a good initial run and then I lost, and I don't know if this is for me. She clearly wants it, right? She came back, she studied. Ben is a better player than her, and I thought that coming in, but I'm kind of reassured that, she's going to be a presence in the Schmoedown going forward in a way that is competitive, because I think that she's going to come back stronger. And, if she were up against someone else in round 1, I think she very well may have gotten through, because I think she put in a good performance.
Yeah, I agree with that. And another person who I expect we will see around next year, and maybe we'll have a different or elevated role given the NUKE. Scott, we've danced around it in this episode. Why don't we just get to it now? We were hoping that it was going to be something big, and yes, contrary to what that one guy in the chat said,
bigger.
Yeah, contrary to what that guy said, it was quite big. That reminds me of a comment one time that someone made. Someone that I knew in college. We went to a restaurant. He ordered a hamburger with nothing on it, and then ate the hamburger and said, "I expected more from this." It kind of reminds me of that. This guy said, expected something bigger, but it's hard to get much bigger than what we did get with the NUKE. Spoilers ahead, but Christian announced basically that everything's getting nuked. We are going to throw every single Schmoedown. He said 115 competitors. I'd be surprised if it's actually that many.
I think he's talking about every person who's ever competed in the Schmoedown.
I know. That would mean like Bruce Green is coming back, like Umberto El Mayembe, all these people who scored about 4 points in their matches. I don't think we're going to see
collectively scored 4 points in their matches.
Yeah. So that might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but everyone, for the most part, is going to be thrown into this giant pool. We're going to have a fantasy style draft in which there are going to be 10 managers of 10 different teams. And they're going to take, I believe, again, the number is...
they'll draft all the players.
Right. Yes. 15 was, I think, the number that Christian said, like, for each team.
Well,
right?
It'd be 11 it'd be like 11 or 12 per team.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But yeah, everyone will get drafted by someone. There are a few different sort of kinks to this. One being that if you're a champion, then your manager will have the option to keep you, which I imagine, I don't understand why a manager would not want to keep someone who's a champion. Christian gave us the example of Mike and Chance. If they remain the team title winners, then Grace and Ken, who it sounds like will be the, one of the managers collectively in the draft, will get the option to keep corruption. And I think they would probably do so.
I think they would do so just to keep Mike. I mean, I'm thinking back in my head, how is he not the number 1 draft pick given his triple threat status in the league? But we can talk
with
about
Rachel
that
now out. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Some people said that they were wondering if Rachel might come back as a manager for this, which would be cool, but I just don't know if she is interested in
I
that.
mean, Clark might, right? Because like she's still
That's true,
around, but
yeah.
like Rachel, I mean, maybe she attends a couple like tapings every once in a while, but it sounds like she's disconnecting pretty hard from the league. I don't know. I mean, maybe Sam Levine will come back as a manager. I don't know. Sam Levine would be hilarious as a manager, by the
Yeah,
way. I
he
would love
would.
Sam Levine as a manager.
Yeah, that'll be one thing that's interesting, just seeing who all of the managers are, because
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that most of the current managers will probably remain managers, Jay Washington, Roxy, Kaiser, but that still leaves, a few spots for new people to be managers, I think.
Yeah, I wonder if Emma will come back and be a manager. I wonder
Maybe.
what the status of like commissioners will be next year, if
Yeah.
it'll be the same or not. But I also just think that, and just to say my piece on the nuke, like I think it's great. I mean, we were talking before we went live here that it's a huge risk. It's what it is. It's definitely a risk. But like as entertaining as season 6 has been, as much as it has been the Magic season, you can't have, if you don't change anything for next season, then things get a little bit stale. Even if you're having amazing matches, every single time out, the league feels samey. So they mix it up last year with Anarchy. They mix it up this year with having more live events, which I'm sure they're going to lean even harder into next year. And they've talked about leaning even harder into next year. But you still need something new, and they're going even bigger. Maybe, I don't know how much of a, like, because last year you felt like it was a really big financial risk shifting to Patreon, only doing, not only, but like primarily focusing on these big central live events every month. And next year they're taking a different kind of risk. I don't know if it's as much of a financial risk because the Patreon is still there. That's not changing unless people just pull their donations at this, which would be insane in my mind because I think this is really cool. But it's a big risk in terms of like, if this league doesn't work out really well, if people don't end up liking it like halfway through the season, you might be stuck between a rock and a hard place in terms of that and holding people on. But I think it's an awesome idea. I will say, just to give my own feedback, and one thing that I'm a little bit skeptical about, I think 10 teams, 10 factions might be too many. I just wonder how they're going to keep everything shuffling around. I'd love to see that number reduced down to 8 a little bit. And like realistically, are there really going to be more than 50 players in the league? Like that's a ton of people right there. Because even if you think across team and singles, that's mostly the same people.
And Intergeekdom, yeah.
Well, I'm just saying, like in teams and singles, which is like 2/3 of to your point. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, Intergeekdom. For the most part, I mean, there's some overlap, right? But it's the same cast of characters. But
that's what I was going to say, because there's a lot of random people in Intergeekdom too that like don't play anywhere else, like Sean Drew, Brandon Hanna, all of those people.
Yeah, now that definitely is a separate group. Yeah, that definitely is a separate group of people. But I'd say like there's at least 50% overlap, at least if not more, 50% overlap between singles and teams, which is fine, right? But and you're talking about if there's 115 different competitors, yes, some of the you might be playing in multiple divisions, but there's only we only right now at least only get about 100 matches, maybe a fewer than that. I don't know the actual count per year. That's not that many matches per person. And obviously some of that's going to be weighted towards the top half. I understand that. So it's not, it's not an even spread across the board. But I just think that unless they change the number of matches they're producing, which I really doubt they're going to go for more matches next year based on my current understanding. I think it's too many people.
I do doubt it, but at the same time, I just wonder, whether the Schmoedown Entertainment Network will increase the possibilities if they are taking in enough through the super chats and all of that, which they're doing well with so far. The first 4 live streams that they've had have seem to be doing really well in terms of the super chats and Streamlabs and everything, that they're getting money that way. Maybe that will help. Maybe we'll have like more double headers or stuff like that, like 2 matches at once.
And that would be awesome. I'm just thinking like just in terms of a sheer time commitment, right? And I know Christian is taking a step back, or at least he has this year from Collider out of his like VP role to focus more on the Schmoedown. But I mean, I don't know how much more they can do right now with just one taping day, right? Because they're not taping every weekend. I understand that, nor I don't think would they ever be taping every weekend. But they're taping like 6-7 matches a day when they are taping. It's just I don't know. I think it'd be a big jump to start doing more than what they're doing, and I'm curious if that is a direction they would go. I don't think that it might be. I mean, we'll see how it goes. Of course, it all matters around around the spectacular. If you are able to get a bunch more patrons, if you are able to hook a bunch more people, including after next year starts, right? If you're able to hook a bunch of new people with the new format, right? I mean, I think that's definitely a possibility, because now you don't have to feel like you're not able to just immediately jump on board at the new season because of all the storylines, because every single season there's always storylines coming in from the previous season into the next season, whereas now yes, of course, there's always the history there between certain competitors, but with it's a full league reset, which I think will be a good jumping on point if you are able to get that, if you are able to get people's eyes on the new season and on board.
Yeah. And yeah, I think I think your arguments are well founded, and that's why I would be surprised if we see a total of 10 teams. I think that was Christian being optimistic about the number of competitors that are actually going to return.
Yep.
And that maybe, that, like you said, the number will be more realistically more around 50 to 70. And that way they can cut it down to maybe 8 teams or something like that.
Yeah. Eight teams of 8 or 7 would be, I think that's a good number. Cause then you need everyone to play on your team as well. And I'm sure on a future podcast, we can talk about what like the actual matchups seem like, because yes, of course we're talking about singles teams, but I'm really interested to see how they're going to play off. Like, what if like 2 factions teams, however you describe it, go up against each other in sort of like I'm partially tennis, but like in a sort of like Davis Cup or Fed Cup or Labor Cup, whichever ones. Take your pick of the tennis tournaments where you have all these different matchups go on for like one big event or something like that, and they have like a points total or something. That'd be really cool, but we can talk about that at a later date.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about the NUKE. I'm very excited for those very reasons, because this is like anarchy on steroids. I think that it's like anarchy, but it's going to count, right? Like some of those anarchy teams, we were like, oh, this could be cool. Then they played 1 or 2 matches, and that was the end of it. And so I think this is something that's going to stick around. If you end up in a faction, if you end up on a team with someone who is previously been your enemy, it's not like you're going to play 2 matches or whatever, and that's the end of it. You're going to have to deal with the people in your team for a whole season, and that could create some very interesting dynamics based on who ends up on the same team together. And we may see a lot of heel turns and face turns going on in the kayfabe next year.
And the whole idea of trades is just, I mean, I'm already think it's absolutely hilarious.
We're going full sports league now, which I mean, obviously I'm about.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. I think one of the really interesting things, though, to your point is, and I think this might be a question for a more lengthy discussion on a future podcast, but one of the first things that came to my mind is, what does this mean in general for kayfabe, right? Because so much of the league factions, et cetera, the groups, the teams that you see right now are built on kayfabe, but now you're in some ways removing kayfabe to actually form teams in a I use this in quotation marks, like authentic way, in a natural way, in terms of a draft. If of course, I suppose there's some cynical people out there maybe like, well, maybe if the draft is rigged and Christian tells you who you have to draft and stuff like that. I really doubt that will actually happen. I think that they are, to your point, going for this kind of full sports league and have an authentic draft in that way. And I just wonder how kayfabe will be. I don't think kayfabe will go away at all, because you can't. I mean, I guess you could just drop everything that's happened in the past in the Schmoedown. I don't expect that would happen, but I think it'll be really interesting to see what kayfabe will be like next season too.
Yeah, it will. But I mean, I would go the other way and say I think this is going to increase the kayfabe that we see probably, and
make harder work for Christian and the team for kayfabe.
But they have shown that they're up to it, and again, overall, I'm very positive on this, just because I think, like you said, they've done something new pretty much every season to reinvent the Schmoedown and keep it fresh. And so far, they've kept that core fan base and even increased it some. If you look at the number of patrons that have remained, it's remained pretty consistent throughout this season, I believe, compared to last season when they were really struggling, and Christian was in the Facebook groups and everything a lot, asking for people to sign up. And I think that they've established a good core who, it includes people like us that I think are going to go with them in pretty much any direction that they choose to go. So, that's the NUKE. Definitely on the scale that I was hoping to get from something that had been hyped up so much. And makes me only more excited for season 7. But Scott, before
they've been hovering around 4,000 patrons for most of the year. Sometimes they've gotten a little bit higher in some of the peaks of the season, but they're hovering right around there. And that's about, to your point, double, almost triple what they had last season.
So that's awesome. But Scott, before we get to season 7, we got some more matches in season 6 to finish out. I guess my bracket only has one difference from, or the bracket now only has one difference from my actual bracket. And I will say that I stand firm in seeing that Brendan Meyer will move on from, I believe I had him beating Riley in my bracket. So that doesn't change now that he's facing Stacy. Scott, do you have any amendments that you want to make to your predictions now that your bracket has gotten shaken up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had Ethan Irwin beating Chance Ellison over in the top right, and I stand by that. I think Ethan will. I think that the head to head duel match rather than the triple threat match favors Ethan. I think Bibiani was able to pick up a few steals off of in the triple threat format, a few more than Ethan was able to. And I think it's also just hard to beat Ethan Irwin twice. He's just such an incredible competitor. I still think he's probably the best player in the singles division. Of course, every player is so good that just the slightest change in luck can swing a match. Whether of course, you still have to perform and answer the questions that are in front of you, whatnot, if you're the competitor in that situation. But luck matters a lot in the top tier in terms of what you're spinning, etc. And so it's possible that of course he loses this match to Bibiani, but I think he's just such a tough player to beat twice. And so I am going to stick with Ethan in that matchup. I think I had Mike beating Roca in the bottom right. In the bottom left, I'm sticking with Ben over Paul, even though I had been over Lon before. And then the top left, where I got neither match correct, I'll take Brendan Meyer over Stacey Howard. But Stacey proved me wrong.
Yeah, she's already done it once. She could very well do it again, but I'm going for the kid in this one. I think he's got a lot of momentum coming into this one.
Yep. We have another big prediction, though. So,
what's that?
We have another big prediction to make, though.
Which is?
The live event. The main event.
Oh, right. Yes. So Orlando, Founding Fathers versus Corruption. Thank you for reminding me of that. I almost forgot. I was in full tournament mode, so I almost forgot that was going to happen. Yeah. First of all, who's going to win the fan four-way?
Not
out
us.
Of all the Schmoedown fans. Yeah, definitely not us.
Unfortunately. As much as I would love it to be one of us.
I will say about the fan four-way, it's an awesome idea. I'm very here for it. I hope that the person who wins is like an established fan league person, because it would be really cool to see someone who has been kind of grinding in the fan leagues for a while get their chance to make it to the big time. And I hope that it is a quality match, because there's a lot of fan league people out there who are not going to get to attend this event, but would be very, very great competitors in the Schmoedown. And so I know it would be frustrating for them, were somebody who was only, average or somewhat mediocre to actually get their chance in the Schmoedown. Because obviously Paul has been the cream of the crop, and Chance has been really good too. But there was that one guy last year who played like the patron match, who was a fan, Matt something, and he wasn't that impressive. I think maybe there have been one or two other fans like that who.
But that was he paid like to the tier though. That wasn't the same as like.
Was that what it was?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
Well, anyway, I hope it's somebody who
Didn't he play like Rosie Knight or someone?
Yeah, he did. And I believe he won, but
no, he didn't win.
He didn't win. Okay.
No. Fact check me on that, everyone, but I'm pretty sure he did not win that.
Anyway, main event, Founding Fathers versus Corruption, Scott. Round 3. We saw this with top 10 when Roca and Nos were that team. 3 times they tried to go up against the Patriots, and 3 times they went down. Is it going to be the same for their rivalry with Corruption?
My gut, my instinct tells me that it's going to go exactly. Well, okay, what I should say. I think this match is much more likely to be like their first match against each other, right? That went to sudden death, losing by that controversial David O. Russell question. And I do not believe we will. I guess technically it wasn't a TKO the second time they played each other, but it was 30-20 going into the third round, and they had to get all 10 points in order just to force Corruption to hit one of their 3 questions in round. I guess that was a round 3. This will be a full 5-round match. I think the 5-round format probably helps the Founding Fathers a little bit. I think it should. Yeah. That being said, it's not like everyone on the table hasn't played a 5-round match before. Of course, Corruption being the team champions, Mike having multiple belts, Dan, of course, being singles champion, and Roca being the singles and teams champion as many times as he's been. Everyone's going to have experience, but I think that the elongated format makes it more difficult. And will Corruption spin Bond? Big question. Of course they can. I hope not. Of course they can run through. Okay, yes, like they are able to run through other categories besides Bond. But when you spin Bond and they have as strong as a first round as they are consistently doing every single time, like every single time they're getting 14, 15, 16 points in the first round. Like when you combine that with spinning Bond, you may not be miles ahead by the time the third round starts, but you're going to be in the lead. by the time the third round starts. And so that just helps tremendously. So again, I think a lot of it comes down to luck. I think that if a few things go one way or another, it will be, I think, a much closer match than we saw than in Corruption versus the Founding Fathers Part 2. But Part 3, I'm still going to give the favor to Corruption. I think people still are trying to put an asterisk next to Mike's like non-intergeekdom performances by slapping James Bond onto the end of it, but he's just doing too well in the first and third rounds for it just to be a gimmick with so many James Bond round twos that he's been through this year. And Chance is the real deal. I mean, yes, we talked earlier in the show about how he hasn't necessarily translated that to those 5-pointers in round 3 in the singles division, but he's consistently showing up in the teams division, running, he got a perfect round against the Shire Wolves, did the Dewberry against the Shire Wolves, and then, crushed. I think he missed one question the entire match, missed his 3-point question.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, he I don't even remember, but I think he missed this 3-point question or something. And he's a force to be reckoned with too. And when you have those two players together, as good as Roca and Merle are and have been in the past, I just don't think they are right now as electric and as good, whether it be individually or in terms of team chemistry, as Corruption is. And so I think I have to give them the edge. But at the same time, I do think this match is going to be closer. And, with a little bit of luck one way or the other, I think it could go either way.
Yeah, Scott, I hear everything you're saying. I don't necessarily disagree with anything, but I'm going for the upset in this one, not just because I want it to happen. I think that the Founding Fathers and the Horsemen have done, historically pretty well in live events. Roca has won a live event. Ben obviously won that huge live event in Houston. Dan Murrell had a perfect game in New York when he won the title at the start of the year.
I'm not worried about Dan. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Obviously, it is Roca. And, obviously, we saw the Founding Fathers also play a live event, albeit against a not very tough opponent. Yeah. But still, they had an almost perfect game in their KO victory. Sure. So I think they do thrive in front of a live environment. I think that's going to create a closer match. And I just wonder if this is going to be one of those matches where Mike Kalinowski, obviously, he's really going to want to win it. And maybe that will get the best of him a little bit because this is going to be an epic match in front of a big audience. And maybe the experience of the Horsemen will help them over the finish line in this one. I agree that even if the Founding Fathers don't win, I think it's going to be a much closer match. So I'm going to go with the Founding Fathers to win this one. And I think that if they don't win it, John Roca should step away.
I think he will, though. I think win or lose, you might see him step away. I mean, we'll see.
Maybe,
yeah. I mean, we'll see. We'll see if he comes back for next season. That's neither here nor there yet. But
especially with the NUKE, I was just going to say, it might not be. He might just feel like it's not worth it for him to.
It seems like he's only still in this league because of Dan Murrell. So, if maybe they'll be a top 5 team. I mean, especially if they win the title here and are defended, they'll be a top 5 team by the end of the year, and so you could pick them up together. But honestly, if you're a manager like Roca, one of the greatest of all time, historically in the league has mattered a great deal. But do you want him to be your first or second round pick right now?
Yeah, that's
when you're thinking about the NUKE. I mean, probably not. I don't know. But that being said, I think that I hear what you're saying about the well, not necessarily. I mean, the Horsemen have done well in live events historically. I agree with that. Dan has done fantastic live events. John has been not too shabby himself. But I don't know how you could say anyone is better in live events than Mike Kalinowski. So I hear what you're saying there, but I think both these teams are very well primed. I think Chance feeds off that energy. He beat Janine at the live event, the same live event, of course, that Dan Murrell beat Ethan Irwin. And Mike Kalinowski, yes, he lost, the Inner Geekdom belt in the first Schmoedown Throwdown, but he's been the real deal in just about every other live match he's played. Yes, he didn't play Smets in a live match, I don't think, but beat Rachel at Comic-Con. Of course, beat the Shire Wolves in the Throwdown match from August in their final match, and so I hear what you're saying about doing well in live events, but I think the other side of the table has done equally well in those. Definitely. It's fine margins, but I want to will it into existence, the Founding Fathers winning. Yeah, that's fair. I like the Horsemen too, but I don't know. John Roca has just been rubbing me the wrong way with stuff he's been saying, not outside of the Schmoedown recently.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Okay, Scott. Well, I think that should just about do it for a jam-packed episode of Champs Lunch. September was a great month, and October I think is going to be a great month too. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you watch on the live stream, thank you for listening on the podcast. Don't forget to check out all of our other podcasts here on the Some Like It Scott feed. We, of course, have our mainline podcast, Some Like It Scott, which we put out weekly. We also have our Star Wars series, which is going to be coming up pretty soon. So keep an eye out for that. We're going to be reviewing all of the Star Wars movies with someone who has never seen a Star Wars movie before. So it's going to be interesting.
We found the person that exists out there.
Yeah, we found the only one.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's going to be interesting. Keep your eyes open for that. And yeah, just check out all of our other podcasts in the feed. Don't forget about our Patreon, patreon.com/mediaplugpods. And don't forget to like, review, subscribe, do all of the things on your podcast app, YouTube, wherever. We'll see you soon. We will be doing a teams tournament prediction special, probably maybe midway through this month. It'll definitely be before our regular episode at the end of the month for October. So keep your eye out for that. It should be a lot of fun. We're going to go through the teams bracket, which is going to be pretty tough, but I look forward to it. And until then,
hopefully I'll do better than 4 out of 8 with the teams brackets.
Yes, that would be nice for your sake. But until then, for Scott Shelton, I'm Scott Harvey. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Brutal.